Okay, a bit about me. I got a ZX Spectrum in 1983. I was a developer for I am still a developer for most of my life. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of who knows what COBOL is, because, okay, that was, thank you. Yay! Well, yes, I did program in COBOL, mostly because I was young and I needed the money. I try to hide this, but you get to know this side of mine. My favorite language, my favorite software development language now is Swift from Apple. It's very fresh and clean just because it's young. It will eventually grow old and become cumbersome. Was an IT manager for a couple of decades. It means that apart from developing software, I was building the infrastructure, actually taking care of users and designing policies, information security policies. So if I had one word to define me, it would be developer, maker, geek. And don't point out that there are 3 words. Thank you, Bruno Amaral, for that one. Since 2017, I moved into London, the place where I have now 7 days to return, or else I may be locked out. I now earn my living as an information security auditor. A bit more on that. I work for Bureau Veritas, United Kingdom and Ireland. There is, of course, the mandatory legal department statement that says, opinion expressed are solely my own and not express the views or opinions of my employer. And this is the way I don't get sued and I still have a job to go back to. And why? The main focus is that this talk is a conversation starter. It is my talk, and being my talk, it's my opinionated talk. I will express my own very special opinions, and let's underline specials. And I do have lots of pet peeves. You will eventually agree with some of them, but I trust that you disagree with most of them. But it will be factual. I won't tell you a single lie. And it's also available online, so you can say, oh, what kind of silly thing did Basílio just say on the previous slide? You can actually go back and see on your own screen. So thank you for trying that, and let's see how it works. What this talk is not, but please, if this was what you wanted to see, feel free to stay. Don't leave me here alone. It is not about pen testing, hacking. It's not a sales pitch. And so it's basically a conversation starter. We are gathered around the campfire to try and get a feeling what the current status is and where we are heading. So this is divided in 3 parts. Part 1 is about data privacy. And in 2002, I heard this sentence that was, if you're not the product, sorry, if you're not paying for it, you are the product. There it was. I'm not needing that card, I had a mistake. And we all know this. What we have to consider now is, what does it really mean? And what it does mean, we can illustrate it now with an example of 2 friends, a pizza and a movie night. So it's 2 girls and a pizza and a movie. So this was a Wall Street Journal article that said that even a very low-key evening at home can mean handing over a trove of the personal information to high-tech companies. The only thing that we know for sure on high-tech companies is that they will use it for power and sell it for profit, and that's pretty much a given. Now, the amount of data that people willfully, I won't try it, I will probably hurt myself, provide is on this screen, it's on the gray squares, and on the orange squares is the one that companies collect without people actually knowing, most of the time, without getting consent. Some of them are, I would say, pretty much meaningless, like the operating systems. Some of them are actually quite severe in terms of providing that information, because it helps building a profile of who we are. So we eventually may be targeted. We will be, so we're providing them some information on how to target us, for more information for how to manipulate us as a society. There is a huge amount of data collected here, most of it on this simple example, where they send a text message, say, want to come home for a pizza and a movie. Then someone takes a ride on a Uber, drives with Google Maps. There's a pizza that's ordered through Alexa, and it's fulfilled by Domino's. And eventually, at some stage, they post pictures of this on Facebook. So it's pretty much standard pizza night. The funny thing about this is that this old data that we are pouring out, it's probably worth more than the pizza itself. But yes, what's wrong with that? As you say, I really don't care what they do know about me. I can live with that. That's okay. It's not my stance. It's not the way I address things. But what can actually go wrong, and has been proven to go wrong time and time afterward, is abuse of personal data from your employer. If you tweet something, if you post some information, if you use your company computer or your company mobile device at some stage, they will say, oh, you weren't on the place that you said to us that you were, so you're going to be framed for that, whether you deserve that to happen or not. Worst thing is, there is now way more access of information from insurance companies, and insurance companies are known to always rat out on deals whenever possible, and they will just do that using your own data that you provide to them. Same thing for car makers, for governments, and for politicians. And the way we actually noticed that this happened in a very, very strong way was through Brexit, Trump, Bolsonaro, and this was history in the making, and this is pretty much just the beginning. This was the first moment that everything started going wrong in a very concrete way. So, what can we do about it? The first thing that comes to mind when we say data protection is passwords. Keep them sacred, change them often. People are explained that they should handle passwords the same way they handle underwear, which is change them often and don't show them in public. I've got a story about a credit card. I've got a friend. She's a very nice person, but every now and then she ends up losing his credit card. And when I say every now and then, and sometimes it's a matter of days, not months. Well, there's a downside to this. You actually have to ask for the bank to issue a different credit card, which the bank kind of issues and just not charging her for that. Lucky her. But at some stage, there is actually a upside on this, is that you always get to provide different information on a new credit card. The other one gets cancelled. So every, let's say, 60 days, you cancel every account that you have or every means of payment for that account and associate the different means of payment. So it all becomes incredibly safe. So does anyone believe that we should be doing this to be safer, canceling the credit card every month and asking for a different one? And my personal opinion is, no, it would be extreme. But it's actually that we have been mandating for users to do every 16 days or every 90 days for the last decades. And when things go wrong, we actually blame the users on whatever went wrong, saying you didn't abide by the password policy on the company. Let's just take this as food for thought for now. The second thing that comes to mind is, oh, thank you. Two-factor authentication. So the first one is something that we know, passwords, and the second one is something that we have. I believe that most of you would have two-factor authentication, at least on the main accounts. It is quite an interesting safety measure. There is a few solutions for two-factor authentication, and SMS is probably my favorite one, but I am aware that it can be exploited, I wouldn't say easily, but with some degree of success, and this would be the almost good. I'm doing OT or any other software that handles two-factor authentication and RSA tokens as the second best choice. And the reason is it lacks context, meaning when you're trying to log into a website and it requires the second part of your authentication, the OT app doesn't actually pop up saying, this is the code that you have to provide to that website or something else. So you actually have to manage a great deal of authentications or tokens or whatever it is. The absolute worst one, don't even call it two-factor authentication, it's the printed card. And the printed card, it's something like we did have in some, thank you, Celso, some bank accounts here in Portugal. Now, so you all have two-factor authentications, good people, thank you. I was going to say good boys, but then I noted. And this is because safety. And so this is all about safety, and now nothing can go wrong, right? Well, you probably all know the site I've been owned. It kind of just ranks up all the huge data breaches that happened. I just collected 8 of them that I do enjoy, and it adds up to more than half a billion of accounts. This is billions according to the other billion. And especially things like 152 million account data gets exploited through Adobe. And this is not about the fact that users from Adobe Creative Account Cloud, they had very weak passwords or they failed to change it every 16 days. This is mostly about something that went wrong in the back office, something that went wrong on someone using a framework that had a vulnerability, or in the worst case scenario, a manager having a poor password. What I have to say about this is that it is never the user password that's causing the problem that we have. So let's take a moment to pause and ask for forgiveness for all the users that we aggravated for the last 2 decades with passwords, without nuisance. So this is my takeaway for the first part. We're not just managing information. We did on the 80s, we did the software. On the 90s, we did the operating systems and got that right. And then eventually we moved everything into the cloud, and now it's on someone else's computer. There is no physical control over most of the information that we have. But this is not about John Smith and his Fitbit account password. By the way, mine is Basílio 1234, and I really couldn't care less whoever uses that Fitbit account. It is we as developers, as DevOps, and as the managers that we can actually do something to address the current status of this situation. So, tools to manage situations. The second part is about management systems. Management systems is something that can help you a lot, and I'm going to illustrate this with 3 examples. It's all about cakes, either making a cake at home. So we'll start with version 1.0. We all can make cakes. Thank you. There will be cake. We all know how to get all the ingredients, mix them, bake them, and then enjoy your delicious and moist chocolate cake. And nothing can really go wrong. And this is most probably a one-off. You can handle interruptions. If at some stage you're mixing the dough and something happened, you can just leave it and then go back. Like 5 minutes later, there was no clogging on the whole kitchen because of that. And you're cooking for yourself or your friends, so you don't really have to meet any big expectations, and you don't really care about profit. Now we move to the cake factory. I was actually missing a picture, so let's just imagine a long, nice, clean assembly line of a factory producing delicious and moist cakes. So now you have to deal with goods ins. You have to check if the provided goods are up to your specs. You have to check if they are correctly stored. And then eventually, you have to move them into the industrial assembly line. And you have to do this just in time. You have stock control. You cannot produce more cake than you can safely store before sending it to, to your retailers. And you will have, eventually, quality control, just making sure that the cake is actually edible, non-toxic, not radioactive, and actually abide with every law that you have on your company. So now you're working with a context. You have got shareholders, you have got suppliers, you've got employers, you've got your council, you've got the neighbors, you've got laws that you have to abide. There's actually a whole lot of needs and expectations that you have to meet to make a profit, to still be able to produce cake in a couple of decades. So the way for this is actually you plan. The nice thing with plans is, in the wise words of Mike Tyson, is that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And afterwards, you're kind of just trying to manage situations the best you can. Allow me to introduce to a couple of friends. It's a nice guy named Deming and a lovely lady. I have no idea. Well, Edward Deming is the guy in the middle. The lovely lady, actually, that picture is wrong. I'm going to take a personal moment here to ask you for you to join me on a round of applause to a very special friend. She's my mentor. She is the person that actually believed in me in all this process of going from a manager to an auditor on information security. And she's the person that I always look up to when I have any doubt or when I feel unsafe on what I'm doing. She's with us today. She's Paula Costa. Please rise up. Thank you for everything. Thank you, guys and girls. Now, the other not so good-looking guy is actually the guy that came up with the Deming cycle. The Deming cycle, you probably kind of know it, is a continual improvement cycle where you plan to do something. You do whatever you're going to plan to do. You go back, check how did things work, and then you act upon what went wrong and on what went right. And this is the basis of most management systems. The good thing about this is that you actually learn from previous lessons. You actually learn from your mistakes. You actually end up knowing what you have. You keep tabs, you keep checks and balances. This means that you have to monitor what you're doing. You're not just doing as you can. You're not just kind of winging it. You are actually keeping tabs on everything. It takes some extra work, but believe me, it pays off every time. And what's in it for me? Well, you get repeatability, and repeatability is not actually a bad thing. It means that you can produce the same product according to your specs over and over again with a very good success rate. You get continuous improvement because every time you're doing this, you're actually defining a baseline of how you're operating. You actually know what you're doing, and then eventually, on top of that, you can learn with your lessons, and you have all the data available for change management. And change management is a big part of a life on a company, because everything kind of ends up changing every now and then, and that's the way you actually handle being punched in the mouth. We do this using management systems. Most of them are now they now start with risk assessment and risk treatment. These are actually kind of fancy words on figuring out what can change on your company, what can go wrong, what can go right, and then deciding whether you want to mitigate this risk by either avoiding it or you want to reap the benefits from that risk, from that opportunity that may present to yourselves. So we're now on the version 3.0 robotized cake factory. For all of you, thank you for bearing with me up until now. Did I poke your eye? Okay, thank you, thank you. Always wear goggles, thank you for that. This is the part that, because this is Pixels Camp, you all can do this. This is now you're on your playground. We're now past that nice factory that you imagine with lots of people working there. We now have the robotized cake factory. Very few people on this one. Mostly it's machines operating with software. The software handles all the funny parts about making cakes and making sure that it ends up looking like a cake and not some dead furry animal. And actually, apart from that, your supply chain management is on the cloud, meaning that you get all the goods in for you to make the cake are being asked on a B2B system that is communicating with your suppliers and saying, for the next 3 hours, I need this amount of flour. For the next 5 hours, I need this amount of sugar. I need this amount of milk. And is actually managing what has to be where and what exactly requirements does it have. And it manages, if a supplier cannot provide on that one, it will choose the other one. And this is all done through some very smart software that's running, that is holding your company working in tip-top shape. All the production and control is now done via software that you very cleverly developed, and congratulations for that. In the end, you only have to, you have an API, so an hotel can ask for, let me have 150 cakes of this kind, and you then just start a software to invoice it and then just keep everything in check whether there was payment or not. So we can all imagine an enormous, humongously big cake factory with like less than 10 people managing it, whereas there was like 2,000 people from the same thing. So the management system that we use for this has to take really good care on basically 3 things, which is the confidentiality of your information, the integrity of your information, and the availability of your information. And when I say information, it's mostly, especially on this one, it's mostly about information stored on digital devices. But it is also information that is on your desktops, like papers that may be laying around. Never underestimate physical access. And there are systems to manage this. And this is pretty much what I do for a living. As actually I go into a company and tell them, so what are your risks? What are the controls? What are the measures that you took to minimize these risks? And say, we do have this facility where we keep all the goods in, and to make sure that no one goes there and contaminates it, we have access control. And we have this access control policy. We have this design and development department. They design all the new cakes. And we do have a clear screen, clear desk policy, meaning that if they step away from the computer, they do have not just to wait for the computer to lock itself, they have to lock it, just make sure that there's this window of opportunity for people to actually spy on it. And there's risks of loss of integrity. If there is some error while transmitting a file from one place to another, or you pick up the wrong file, you may end up with the wrong recipe, and you may have now a huge problem in your hand. And in the end, there's all about availability, which means pretty much don't use Windows computers on the machines, because eventually they will stop for an update, and you've got all your production line, your assembly line now completely clogged up because you now have machines waiting, one for the availability of the others. So there's lots of changes, lots of decisions to make here. You consider those decisions, you write them down, or at least you talked about them. You choose the controls that you have in place, and then you make sure you have a plan. You go back, check whether it did happen, and then act upon it. If someone leaves his computer and doesn't lock his screen, his computer, actually say, okay, this shouldn't have happened. So now we probably need to address awareness training, saying people, oh, listen, we really have to do this. If you don't run a WOSP on your frameworks, on all your code, if you don't run it through NIST, just make sure that all the known vulnerabilities, in the end, you eventually end up with a worse software than the one you need. So it's all about keeping up the exact same plan, do, check, act, and building this up on a continual improvement. So the risk assessment is figuring out what can go wrong on our robotized cake factory. We do have issues with loss of confidentiality. The last one is you don't want your bribe list to actually come out, meaning that, well, we paid this for someone from Sheraton to just use us instead of all the other cake providers. And the consequences of this, it's what kills a company. It's loss of income, it's fines, it's an organization reputation itself, or just loss of market share. The idea behind this is that we really need a management system when we're working with the big boys, when you're actually doing something in an organization and for a living. Wing it just doesn't cut it. And there's a Portuguese word for it, which is desenrascar. Now, we all know that actions leads to errors, errors leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side. So, we have a system, and we say, use the system, look. And everything is okay, you're now invincible, you can dodge bullets, you are the one. Nothing can go wrong, right? Well, no, not really. We'll look into a real-world scenario. But first, the takeaway. We cannot just wing it, and we temos de parar de desenrascar. The reason why I brought this expression, desenrascar, is it is sometimes referred as one of the biggest assets that we Portuguese have. We can always fix something on the go. But that's pretty much this. We are providing short-term, substandard solutions to a problem. And it will hurt us every time in the long run. And we are all here for the long run because we will all die in, I say, 60 years or something. Well, not you, but the other ones, you get the point. So, part 3. And part 3 is one of the most relevant pieces of legislation that came out of the European Union. European Union gets an enormous amount of things wrong in terms of legislation when it comes to IT. They pretty much have absolutely no idea what's a computer or what's data. But every now and then, they got something right, and they did it on this time. And it's GDPR. It's General Data Protection Regulation. You all heard of this. I'm pretty sure I'm not the first one. Wink, wink. But so we now all know that we always had data protection laws. Previous data protection laws had a cap on the fines that could be inflicted on an organization. And the fines that you inflict on an organization is actually a way of saying them, you've been a very naughty organization, and we're going to fix you by hitting you where it hurts. The maximum fine was 500,000 pounds or 500,000 euros or whatever. It's pretty much pointless. We do have now GDPR, and it comes with the possibility to apply fines of 4%. This is pretty much what everyone knows. You may eventually know that now it calls for a data protection officer, which is the knight in a shining armor within the organization that is actually standing there and guarding, making sure that the organization tries to abide it before all on the regulations of GDPR. It was a 2016 EU regulation with a 2-year grace period. It came into totality on 25 of May 2018, and we did notice, the first thing that we noticed was the amount of data breaches that was reported afterwards went over by 1 order of magnitude, to say the least. It's either A, hackers were pretty much way more interested before that, after the GDPR, or all the data breaches were happening and everyone was just happily sweeping them under the rug. I'm pretty sure it was the second one. But anyway, oh, and there were a lot of emails about consent. We did get that. Oh, this is interesting. Wake up, little Susie. Houston, we just had our glitch. What eventually you may not have is, let's share a few useful tips here. Loss of information is a data security breach. If you have a data backup tape with data that you haven't used for the last 3 years, stored in a warehouse, and you don't even need that tape anymore because you're now doing backups to hard drives or the cloud or whatever, and suddenly that warehouse gets burned to a crisp, that is a data security breach. Most people wouldn't consider losing that tape, which you actually know, it's just a pile of smoldering ashes. You wouldn't consider that as a loss of security breach, a data security breach. It is, and you must pick up the phone or fax or whatever and call your data protection agency on the country where you're based and tell them that we just lost these tapes and this was the data that was provided there. Treat this as if some hacker had that tape and is now posting them on a paste bin somewhere. It is the exact same thing that you have to do. The other interesting part is that you do have to consider and agree on your company, an organization, a data retention policy. If I'm collecting your data, if I'm collecting your emails, or if I'm collecting your names, or in some cases it can be personal identified information, can be things like your location and your IP addresses, something that eventually may be traced back to yourselves. I have to explain them why I need that information. We'll then look into what information I have to collect, but also you have to agree on the retention period. If you're running a company that's actually trying to get jobs for people, you would get them their CVs, and you're submitting the CVs. The question here is, for how long are you keeping the CVs? And most people would say, well, a couple of years. It's useful. These guys are actually good guys. I don't have a perfect fit for him now. Thank you, thank you. I don't have a perfect fit for him now, but eventually I'll just keep here just in case. Whenever the justification is just in case, you're doing it wrong and you will pay for this. So you don't keep the data for as long as you can. You keep the data for the shortest amount of time that you can actually justify holding that data. And if 6 months later that position is filled and you're okay with the guy that was now working on the organization, you delete the data on all the remaining CVs. And that's what you write down, and that's what you plan, and that's what you do, and then you go back and check whether this really happened, whether the software actually deleted that CVs. And the other interesting bit about data retention periods is that at some stage, the users have the right to say, I want all my data back. And if you said for some specific data that you are going to hold it for 10 years, on the 7th year, when people say, okay, can I have all my data back, please? And he's asking please just to be polite. You say, oh, we had a fire in a warehouse, there were some old tapes there, you were not going to believe this, we really don't have your data anymore, but we haven't been using it, so we just kind of lost it. This is a data security breach, because by not providing the data, saying that you lost it, this is actually what justifies that a loss of data is a data security breach. You have to keep the data secure. If you're saying that you keep them for 10 years, you have to keep it for 10 years and not one day longer than that. But within this time frame, if people ask for the data, you have to be able to provide them. And this is not the only thing that you have to provide within the concept of GDPR. You actually have to provide those nice, interesting, top secret, business sensitive, very juicy, and congratulations on coming up with those, algorithms for profiling and decision making. If you run a bank, as an IT department of a bank, if you develop a software and you're doing some profiling and figuring out the good boys from the nasty boys, you will know now, I will lend money to Basílio because he's a nice guy, blue eyes and everything, but I won't lend the money, for instance, to Bruno Amaral, which we all know his background for now. And the funny thing is, after GDPR, Bruno Amaral has the power to go there and says, can I have, everyone read his screen? Okay, thank you. Can I have your algorithms, please? The algorithms that you used to say, you won't lend me the money. He is not entitled to the money. You will never be entitled to the money. Please. But he is entitled to see those nice algorithms. So it's a whole different ball game. The other one is the geographical limit. It is an European Union regulation. Most people say, oh, we just have to buy this if we are within the European Union. So if you are a North American company and you're now creating a user account for a Japanese guy, I would say that every one of you would guess that, no, we don't have to abide by the GDPR. In fact, you have. And the reason is, this Japanese guy that's creating a user account on a North American company is now in Slovenia. It's a geographical limit. If the user is in Slovenia, that's European Union, and is covered by GDPR. And this is a huge headache. And either you embrace this fully, or you just run away from it. But either way, you have to abide by it. And I'm just the auditor. I'm just the guy that goes into an organization and say, well, you paid me to point where everything was wrong. I'm not the one doing the fines. There are nice judges for that. And the other thing that is now mandatory, it's not just best practice or a good idea or wishful thinking, is privacy by design. Privacy by design is something that has to be in the very earliest stages of your software development cycle. When you're writing down the requirements of your software, you have to write down the requirements of software saying, we need to collect this information, we need to store it on this way, we have to have these controls for access, and we will retain this information for this amount of time. When we're throwing out that hard disk, we're going to wipe the hard disk according to some standard. If we cannot wipe the hard disk, we will destroy the hard disk. We will retain copies that we've destroyed the hard disk. All of this has to go into consideration way before you even open Notepad or whatever text editor you use to program. And if you do all of this, you will avoid the extremely long enforcing stick on GDPR. And the extremely long enforcement stick is there's a limit on 4% turnover on fines. And turnover is all the money that you move every year. It has absolutely no resemblance with the concept of profit. So it doesn't really matter if you can hide your profits. If you're getting 300 million from some guy to run some ads, and then you're paying 299 million. Oh, poor you, just keeping 1 million because there is some company in Ireland that actually handles all of this. In the end, if anything goes wrong, you get to pay 4% of those 300 million. And this is huge. And GDPR has actually a very good framework for a nice thing called class action suits, which is, at some stage, there is a nice guy that figures out something went wrong with my data, and his name is Malkata. You really couldn't care less who Malkata is. What you know now is that there is a huge law firm that said, we'll just call them bloodsuckers are us, and we'll say, we'll go after this. We will go after this company. And at this stage, when they win this class action suit, they will post something on Facebook saying, we just won this class action suit, and because we're nice guys, we did it for the whole class of people that have pretty much the same profile as Malkata, someone that actually his information was lost, was abused, was misused, was used past his consent. And everyone gets a nice check. You get a check. Well, I also hate Oprah, so I won't do everyone gets a check, but they do. And when the class action suits come up, you will understand that GDPR has a very strong framework, so it's almost incredibly easy to piggyback a class action suit on this one, and this will make the 4% turnover look like child's play, like money for pizza. And on this topic, in January 2019, so exactly on this year, Google had the first, I would say, interesting fine within the context of GDPR. And it was a 50 million euros, I guess, fine. And this wasn't a fine on things that Google does wrong. This was a fine on just the way Google gathers consent for users within the Android operating system. So eventually, the amount of things that Google does wrong, it's way more than this. And this is the reason why I say this was just a slap on the wrist. And this brings me to one of my special pet peeves. Whether you would agree with last sentence or not, you can actually raise your hand if you agree, or just throw me something heavy if you don't. I can actually dodge things very fast. But in the end, I don't really care whether you agree or not. You cannot say information security and Android in the same sentence with a straight face. It just doesn't work. And, oh, okay. And we'll get, okay. Did I got him? No. Okay. Let's look at a real-world example. When I say real-world example, this really happened, was something that I actually had the pleasure to spot and say, you really need to address this. This is a company that is managing sensitive information for quite a while. I would say a couple of decades. This is a company that is managing health, personal health information for a couple of decades. They are extremely sensitive to this problem, and they are doing it, I would say, remarkably well. Still, they made this mistake, and they made this mistake after GDPR. This is their iOS app, and this is the good example. The company name isn't Orange Rectangle, but on this printer, on this picture, and this is what you get when you open their app, and the app actually requires location, you get all the information that you should have to be compliant with GDPR, to make sure that you're abiding by the law. And they say, what are they collecting? Everyone can point it out. They're collecting your location. Why? What for? What happens if you don't consent? And actually have three choices. Only while using the app, always allow, or don't allow. And if you decide to press don't allow, you get to use all the rest of the app. And then eventually, might be interesting or not, but you get to use the rest of the app. But at the moment, on the proper context, on the decisive moment that the user actually knew why that information was required from him, that was presented to him, and it was presented to him not via the app, but actually via the operating system. And this text has to be accepted by the nice guys in App Store, from Apple. And when I say nice guys, I'm just trying to balance things out here because most people wouldn't consider them nice guys. They actually consider them very nasty people that keep sending this. We won't accept this on your app. Well, anyway, this is the correct way to ask for informed consent. On the Android app, well, they didn't went okay. And this brings us back to my pet peeve. So now, just one small house rule. If for some reason you have an Android that is the latest version, and I'm being quite flexible on the concept of what's the latest version. If you have a latest version, the house rule is now you get to shut up. I don't really care about the latest version of Android. And the reason is twofold. One of them, you are irrelevant. You represent less than 3% of the Android operating system. You represent less than 3% of people using, working, and developing for Android. So you are now irrelevant. And the second reason, and this is the reason that won't go away 5 years from now when you only have like 20 or 30% of software running on 4 years old operating system, when all the other ones had the opportunity to catch up, you would still have a very considerable amount of software. But the question is, no one has addressed the real root cause of the problem, what's wrong with Android. So if you are one of the 97% of people that's still running the previous versions of the Android, 2.5 to 3 years, you get presented with that nice screen on the left. And the nice screen, I actually clicked all those arrows to expand it. And I had to expand them one by one and then read the text to try to guess what's happening, what information is it collecting. And in the end, still, there is a very low visibility on what really is happening. For instance, for phone, it says, allows the app to make and manage phone calls, charges may apply. Seems pretty much safe. What they don't tell you is that they get the full access to your phone book, so they get a full copy of the names and contacts of everyone and their social network profiles, and all the information that you have on how many times you call them, the extent of the call. So they now know all the information that you've been using that phone to contact all the person on all the organizations, all the other organizations. And this one went to the extreme of getting access to external storage device. Pretty much okay. We need to store some information on an SD card. We're nice guys. Nothing is going wrong. No. The way this is done on Android operating system is that you are now accepted that they will be able to make a full backup copy of your SD cards with all the pictures and all the information from all the other apps, and that can get stored back into their own service and then used and sold and abused. They get access to microphone and they get access to Wi-Fi connected information. So I'm using this as my company phone. I step into my organization, and the people that did this software now have access on information about all the computers that are surrounding my mobile phone on my company organization's network. If you are okay with this, please raise your hand now. I do have a bridge to sell you. It's red, sits just over there, and we can arrange some nice money. Okay. I think we can all agree that this isn't the correct way to get informed consent. And about the informed part, the reason why they're collecting all this information, including location, which was on the top of the screen, is actually buried somewhere on these 16 screens, ends up there. And you cannot read it. Tough luck, kids. This is a screenshot from your mobile devices. I couldn't read it on my mobile device either, but that's it. This is a major liability. And the quite interesting part about this is that this was a company that was developing software using Xamarin, which we all know as a quite interesting cross-platform development tool. So they did that privacy by design. They written down the requirements. They then started building the software. They did the software using just the same code for every single piece of software. And then in the end, on their software development lifecycle, someone said, this meets the requirements, accept it, make it a check, and they developed it, and this was a live app. It was actually available, and they were using it for a couple of years. And this was accepted past the 28th of March, and we have to ask the question on how did this happen? So we now know what is data privacy. We now know how to manage information security. We now know what's the issues with GDPR. This was a company that had a very interesting management system for information security management system. Everything was going according to plan. How was it possible that at some stage I walked into a company and saw this as all the data that they were collecting versus all the data they were collecting for the exact same app, just developed in the same tool, but then compiled for different operating systems? And sadly, the answer is we. What failed was we as humans. It was the philosophy, it was the mindset, it was the way of thinking of people that developed for Android. Android ended up being a system that people actually get hold of all the information that they can. People do this by default. It is the way to operate on Android. I'm not even saying how easy it is for one app to get access to information on the next app. You get all the information that you want because there is no one telling you, well, you cannot, which is something that actually happens on iOS. There's a nasty guy running the App Store and kicking your all apps back. They're making sure all the nice guys pass through and all the nasty guys actually are rejected. Well, not really. If I would say this, I would be a fanboy, which I'm not. But I do understand that there's lots of wrong things going on the App Store, but the amount of things that they got right actually pretty much is in sync with the needs and expectations to be GDPR compliant. So they are pretty much aligned with the same baseline. As for Android, and the reason why you cannot say information security and Android with a straight face, and you never should say this, well, it is all about ourselves, about the way we manage things. And it is about we, the developers. This was a conversation starter, just so people can now look back and say, can I pinpoint the holes on the software that I'm developing? Can I pinpoint the holes on the organization, on the management system that we're running? Can we figure out where did we go wrong? And can we correct the problems? This was pretty much this. And thank you for bearing with me. I will take some time for questions and answers and for dodging heavy objects that you may wish to throw. Thank you. Any questions? Oh. Here. I have this one. Oh, thank you.
Okay. I would like to know what's your position on, well, in the new Android version, the 9.0, the Android Q, which is in beta right now, I guess. They are restricting the what all the apps need. For example, the GDPR.
The permission models that you get.
Yes.
To manage. Well, thank you for this. Well, the question was, what's my opinion, personal opinion, on the latest version of Android, which is 9 point something, I guess. I'm not actually looking onto the latest version of Android. The previous one, what I actually saw was that there was actually a very strong step forward. But this was the reason why I explained that it is irrelevant at this stage. But there was really a very strong step forward. You now get granularity means that you can accept or reject permissions one by one, saying, I will give them access to the location, but I won't give access to the microphone on this app. And they actually have moved towards a moment where you just don't handle permissions when you install the app, which is the moment where you really are not in the correct mindset to evaluate that. You really are prompted to answer this when you're using them. So Android is slowly picking up the pace and is slowly doing consent in a more correct way. But again, the problem is twofold. One, this won't have any effect. That version of Android that you said, when it comes out, when it goes out of beta, it will still only be available for less than 10% of the devices, and it will take 3.5 to 4 years until you reach an adoption rate of at least 80%. And the philosophy of people developing for software for Android has to change. That won't change on the next beta. That will change through a very long course. But thank you for allowing this. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, nice guy with a red shirt. Oh, no, no. Hello.
You just mentioned that you can choose the permissions.
Mm-hmm.
You have popular apps that say, okay, so if you don't give me permission to that, you can't use our app.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem in terms of users knowing that they are screwed by them. So,
but I'm entirely okay with that.
That's one of the problems. The second one was you mentioned GDPR. None of the big firms have been fined, and we all know the many problems that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep,
what's
indeed.
your position on that?
Let me get back to you on this. The fact that this 50 million euro fine on Google was applied in January and not on the 26th of May, the day immediately after, is that the system that is processing this data breaches, that's processing all the fines that they will eventually apply, takes some time, which is, I would say that, well, no less than 6 months. And this is the reason why we are now starting to see people actually being fined within the context of GDPR. Up until even last December, there was fines that were issued, but it was still issued on the previous legal framework, which is the Data Protection Act of 1990 something. So it was limited, it was capped to a £5,000 or €5,000 fine. It will eventually, we will see this happening now. And as for whether users can use it or not, well, I'm okay with this. If you don't accept it, you don't use the app, I'm okay with this. Just take a moment to go back on the apps that you already accepted, and I'm pretty sure you're not comfortable with the fact that if you have any of the Microsoft Suite apps, which is Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Outlook, let's just take a moment and pause and consider why does Microsoft Word on Android needs to have access to your SMSs and needs to have access to your text messages saying what message have you sent to whom and the context of the message. And we're talking about a very high profile company doing nasty things. I'm not even going on the very kind of dodgy ones, like you buy a lantern, you buy a lava lamp app for your Android, and suddenly you realize that it's actually using a lot of APIs from Facebook just to provide them data on the most possible extent that you have. But thank you. This one. Yep. Well, I will have dinner at 11, so I'm okay with that.
Sure. So in slide 25, you mentioned something about the algorithm disclosure that GDPR mandates, supposedly. In what sense is that enforced?
It's pretty much the same way. If you don't comply with that, you will get a...
But what's that? Is like, do I have to provide the source code?
You have to provide the algorithm, not the source code
just
itself.
Just the description?
Just you just have to provide the business secrets. That's probably the harshest way I can explain it from that. If you consider this, whatever happens to you is probably slightly less than this, but you have to provide them with what is now regarded as your own secret sauce, your own business secrets.
Okay,
And
but
you have to explain them how you profile that person.
okay, but if I still don't provide you my source code, you still have to trust me that I'm actually doing what I'm telling you I'm doing.
Sorry, again?
So the algorithm has some source code behind it, right? And
Yes.
if I don't provide you my source code, you as, you know, the European Union still have to trust me on my word.
Well, either that algorithm reaches the intended results or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you're just adding insult to injury. You're just lying to someone that will fine you 40% of your turnover. So yes, you can technically lie to them, provide them a way more safer algorithm saying that we didn't make any judgment considering his race, but we did. But in the end, you will get a fine if you're like. That's pretty much the shortest version.
Okay, because the conclusion for me
Can
was, well, what are the companies that are actually doing it?
Sorry?
What are the companies that are actually doing it? In the sense-
Insurance companies that turn off, cancel your insurance policy or your health insurance policy.
Okay, so
banks, loans.
does this apply to how Google profile me on the web?
Sorry?
Or does this apply to how Google profiles me on the web? Or how
Yes.
And
It
do
will.
they
It
provide
does.
the algorithms how they do this?
They will be asked at
They
some
will
stage.
be- okay.
Believe me on this one.
Okay.
Can we do? Can still have time for doing another one at least? Okay, so we're wrapping up. Everyone, thank you for this. Terribly sorry, we don't have time for cake any longer. So thank you for bearing with me. Guess what? The cake was a lie. Thank you. Thank you.